Hi guys, are you ready for the next chapter? It's chapter 4, Raising the Storm. Confidential? Mr. Drew repeated, looking at Mr. Ralsted. You may rest assured that whatever you tell us will not be repeated to anyone. Well, I'll say this much, Mr. Ralsted went on. About a year ago, Josiah Crowley came to me and said he wanted to draw up a new will. He indicated that he intended to spread out his bequests among several people. He expressed a desire to write the will himself and asked a number of questions. I took him to my office and told him exactly how to proceed. When he left, he promised to have me look over the documents after he had drawn it up. And you actually saw the will? Mr. Drew asked in surprise. No, strange to say, Crowley never came back. I don't know whether he ever wrote the will or not. And if he did, there would be a chance that it would be legal, Nancy spoke up. Yes, he might have typed it and signed the paper without a witness. In this state, at least 2 witnesses are required and 3 are advisable. What would happen, Nancy asked, if a person were ill or dying and has no witnesses and wants to make a will? Mr. Ralsted smiled. That sometimes happen. If the person writes the will himself by hand and signs it, so there's no doubt the same person did both, the surrogate officer will accept it for probate. Then, if Mr. Crowley wrote out and signed a new will, it would be legal, Nancy commented. That's right, but there's another thing to remember. It's pretty risky for someone who is not a lawyer to draw up a will that cannot be broken. Mr. Drew nodded. If Josiah Crowley left any loophole in a will he wrote personally, the Tophams would drag the matter into court. Yes, it's a foregone conclusion that the Tophams will fight to help the fortune, whether they have a right to it or not. I believe some other relatives have filed a claim, but up to the moment they have no proof that a later will exists. Although Nancy gave no indication of her feelings, the possibility that Mr. Crowley has made a new will thrilled her. As soon as Mr. Drew paid the luncheon check, the 3 arose and left the dining room. Mr. Ralsted took leave Nancy and her father in the lobby. Well, Nancy, did you find out what you wanted to know? Mr. Drew asked after the lawyer had left. Oh, Dad, it's such as I suspected. I'm sure Mr. Crowley did make a later will, and he did it in some place if only I could find out where. It would be like looking for a needle in a haystack, Mr. Drew commented. I must figure out a way, Nancy said with determination. I want to help little Judy. She awoke the next morning thinking about the mystery. But where should she start hunting for the possible clues to a second will? She continued pondering about it while she showered and dressed. As she entered the dining room, she was greeted with a cheery good morning from her father and Hannah grinned. During breakfast, Mr. Drew said, Nancy, would you do a little errand for me this morning? Why, of course, Dad. I have a number of labeled documents which must be delivered to Judge Halt at Mansoville some time after noon. I would take them myself, but I had several important appointments. I would appreciate it if you would drive over there with them. I'll be glad to go, Nancy promised willingly. Besides, it's such a wonderful day. I'll enjoy the trip. Where are the papers? At the office. You can drive me down and I'll get them for you. Nancy, wearing a yellow sandbag dress and jacket, hurried away to get her gloves and handbag. Before Mr. Drew had collected his own belongings, she had brought her car from the garage and was waiting for him at the front door. I put the top down so I can enjoy the sun, she explained as her father climbed in. Good idea. I haven't heard you mention the Crowley case yet today, Mr. Drew teased as she rode along. Have you forgotten about it? Nancy Fade clouded. No, I haven't forgotten, but I must admit I am stumped as to where to search for clues. Maybe I can help you out. I've learned that 2 girls on the river road who expected to be remembered in the will are named Hoover. You might look them up on your return trip. That's great. I'll watch the mailboxes for their name. When they reached the building where Mr. Drew had his office, Nancy parked the car and waited while her father went upstairs to get the legal documents to be delivered to Judge Hart. Returning a few minutes later, he placed a fat manila envelope in his daughter's hands. Give this to the judge. You know where to find him. Yes, Dad, in the old Merchants Trust Company building. That's right. Selecting a recently constructed highway, Nancy rode along, glancing occasionally at the neatly planted field off the side the right. Beyond were rolling hills. Pretty, she commented to herself. Oh, why can't all people be nice like this scenery and not make trouble? It was nearly 11 o'clock when she finally drove into Mansoville. Nancy went at once to Judge Hart's office, but was informed he had gone to the courthouse. Recalling that her father had mentioned the necessity of the papers being delivered before noon, she set off in search of the judge. Nancy had considerable trouble trying to see him, as it was 12 o'clock, when at last she delivered the manila envelope into his hands. Thank you very much, he said. I'll need this directly after lunch. Nancy smiled. Then I'm glad I found you. When Judge Hart learned that Nancy was the daughter of Colson Drew, he at once insisted that she has lunchism with him and his wife at their home before returning to River Heights. She accepted the invitation and spent a very pleasant hour with the Harts. During the meal, the judge laughingly asked if Nancy was still playing aid to her father. Oh, yes, she said, at once told him about the Drews' interest in the Crossy case. Did you know Josiah Crawley or ever hear of him? She asked. Both the Harts nodded. A maid who used to be with them came to work for us after Mrs. Crawley's death, the judge explained. Jane herself passed away a short time ago. We never met Josiah, Mr. Hart added, but Jane pointed him out to my husband and me one time down on the main street. Did he have relatives or friends in town? Nancy inquired. I think not, the judge replied. Nancy wondered what old Josiah has been doing in the manso while if he had no relatives or friends there. The town was not known as a spot for sightseeing. Her interest was further quickened when Mr. Hart remarked that she had seen Mr. Crawley in a town at another time also. How long ago was that? The girl asked. Mr. Hart thought a minute, then replied, Oh, less than a year, I would say. When luncheon was over, the judge said he must leave. Nancy told the Harts she should go too. She thanked them for their hospitality, then said good-bye. Soon she was driving homeward. Why had Mr. Crawley gone to Mansowile? She asked herself. Could it have had anything to do with a later will? Nancy had chosen a route which would take her to the river road. Half an hour later, she turned into the beautiful country road which would wound in and out along the Muskova River and began to look at the names on the mailboxes. Hoover, she reminded herself. About halfway to River Heights, while enjoying the pastoral scenes of the cows standing knee-high in shallow section of the stream and sheep gazing on the flower-dotted hillsides, Nancy suddenly realized the sun has been blotted out. A thunderstorm on the way, she told herself, glancing at black clouds scudding across the sky. Guess I would better put the top on the car up. She pressed the button on the dashboard to raise the top, but nothing happened. Puzzled, Nancy tried again. Still, there was no response. By this time, large drops of rain had started to fall. I'll get soaked, Nancy thought as she looked around. There was no shelter in sight, but ahead, past a steep rise, was a sharp bend in the road. Hopefully, that there would be a horse or barn behind. Nancy started the car again. Vivid forked lightning streaked across the sky. It was followed by an earth-shaking clap of thunder. The rain came down harder. Oh, why didn't I bring a raincoat? Nancy wailed. When Nancy swung around the bend, she was delighted to see a barn with lightning rods around a quarter mile ahead. Farther on stood a small white house. I wonder if that's the Hoover's place, Nancy mused. By now, the storm was letting loose in all its fury. The sky was as dark as night, and Nancy had to switch on her headlights to see the road. She was already thoroughly drenched, and a thought of shelter at this point was one of the safety rather than of keeping dry. Nancy turned on the windshield wipers, but the rain was so blindingly in its intensity it was impossible to see than few feet ahead. Almost in an instant, the road has dissolved into a sea of mud. Nancy had been caught in a number of storms, but never one as violent as this. She feared a mad squid might land her in a ditch before she could reach the shelter of the barn. How much farther is it? She worried. It didn't seem this far away. The next instant, to Nancy's right, a ball of fire rocketed down from the sky. Oh, that was close, she thought fearfully. Her skin tingled from the electrical vibration in the air. A moment later, a surge of relief swept over Nancy. At last, she breathed. At the side of the road, the barn loomed up. Its large double doors were wide open. Without hesitation, Nancy headed straight from the building and drove in. The next moment, she heard a piercing scream. Wow, are you thrilled, guys? Stay tuned for the next chapter. Have a happy day.